For 6 years, she lived in the background. No one remembered her birthday. No one asked where she went after work. She moved quietly, cleaned carefully, and listened more than she spoke. Her name was Eliza, a 32-year-old black woman with a calm face and quiet strength. She was the housemaid in the Winterridge estate, one of the most luxurious homes in the city, owned by a widowed billionaire, Mr. Harold Whitmore. Mr. Whitmore was a powerful man, cold, efficient, the kind of man who could silence a room just by walking in. He didn't speak much to Eliza, only gave instructions, only saw her as part of the furniture. But she noticed things. The way he stared too long at a photo in the hallway. The drawer be locked every night before bed. The fact that he always had tea at 4 p.m., not because he liked it, but because his late wife used to make it for him. Eliza never asked. She just made the tea. Every day, same way. And for 6 years, nothing changed. Until the night she found him. Lying motionless in the study, his hand still clutching a letter. She froze. Not from fear, but because for the first time in 6 years, he looked peaceful. She called for help. Then she waited. And she thought that was the end. Until 2 days later, the lawyer came. 2 days after Mr. Whitmore's sudden death, the mansion was strangely quiet. No phones ringing, no staff moving about, no footsteps echoing in the marble halls. Just Eliza, sitting alone in the kitchen, wearing the same blue cotton dress, hands folded in her lap, eyes heavy but dry. The knock came at 11 a.m. sharp. A man in a dark suit, with silver glasses and a briefcase tucked under his arm, introduced himself. "I'm Mr. Beckman, Harold Whitmore's legal representative." She led him to the library, the only room Mr. Whitmore kept meticulously organized. Books perfectly aligned, a faint smell of cedar and old paper. Mr. Beckman opened the briefcase, pulled out a single envelope sealed in wax. "Mr. Whitmore left very specific instructions," he said. "He updated his will last month. Only one person is named as the beneficiary." Eliza didn't blink. She assumed it would be Nathan, Mr. Whitmore's estranged nephew, or perhaps one of the corporate partners. She didn't expect to be involved at all. The lawyer opened the envelope, read the contents carefully, then looked up. "Miss Eliza Harris, you are the sole heir to the Winterridge estate." She stared at him, not confused, not excited, just silent. "The house, the stocks, the offshore accounts, everything. It's all been left to you." Eliza felt the room tilt, but she said nothing. And then he added, "There's one more instruction, a sealed letter. From Mr. Whitmore, written specifically for you." He handed her a second envelope, the paper thick, the handwriting unmistakable. "To Eliza, for what I never said, but always meant." Eliza didn't open it, not yet. She just held it in her hand as the truth began to whisper inside her bones. Something had always been there between them, unspoken, but not unnoticed. Eliza didn't open the letter that day. She kept it tucked inside the pocket of her dress, carried it through the quiet halls as she packed up the dishes, wiped the dust from portraits, turned off the lights in rooms no one used. It wasn't fear, it was something else. Respect, maybe, or the heaviness of knowing that once she opened it, there'd be no going back. That night, when the house was still, when the moon cast soft shadows across the library floor, she finally sat in Mr. Whitmore's old leather chair and broke the seal. The handwriting was neat, controlled, like the man himself. But the words, "Eliza, you've said so little all these years, but I heard you in every silence. You reminded me of my wife, not in face, not in form, but in the quiet way you paid attention to what no one else saw. The tea, the picture in the hallway, the locked drawer you never touched. You never asked for anything, not even when you knew I had everything. But I've watched you care for this house like it mattered. You cared for me, even when I didn't deserve it. I never had the courage to ask if you hated me, for the way I looked through you, spoke past you. But you stayed, and that meant something. This house needs a soul, not a name. And you, Eliza, have always had both. Forgive me, and live freely. Harold." She folded the letter slowly. No tears, just stillness. Because deep down, she had always known, not the inheritance, not the estate, but the weight of being seen. And tonight, for the first time in her life, she wasn't just the maid anymore. She was Eliza. News travels fast. By the end of the week, every financial blog, gossip column, and news anchor was talking about it. Billionaire leaves entire estate to black maid. Mysterious woman inherits Whitmore fortune. Where is Nathan Whitmore? And then he showed up. Nathan, the nephew, the only living blood relative. He arrived at the mansion in a tailored suit and sunglasses, as if cameras were already waiting. Eliza was in the garden, watering the lilies. She heard his voice before she saw him. So it's true. The maid really did take everything. She turned, calm. I didn't take anything, she said. It was given. He scoffed. He must have lost his mind before he died. There's no way this is legal. You think you belong here, Eliza? She didn't answer. Instead, she looked past him, at the mansion behind them, the one she had cleaned for 6 years, memoirs like the lines of her own hand. I never thought I did, she said softly. But maybe I was wrong. Nathan stepped closer. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. This, whatever game you're playing, it's not over. Then he left, not waiting for a response, not noticing the way her hands trembled just slightly, still holding the watering can. That night, Eliza sat alone in the study. She lit one lamp, opened the drawer Mr. Whitmore had always kept locked. Inside, she found more than she expected. Old letters, legal drafts, a photograph of her, taken without her knowing. And on the back, in faded ink, she saved me, and I hope this saves her. The lawsuit came faster than she expected. Nathan filed a formal challenge to the will, claiming mental instability, undue influence, and fraudulent manipulation by a household employee. The headlines exploded. Maid or mastermind? Eliza Harris, a fortune built on silence. Was Harold Whitmore in his right mind? She didn't answer the press, didn't give interviews, didn't cry in front of cameras. She stayed in the mansion, in the same room she used to dust. Now surrounded by legal teams, publicists, and judgmental whispers from people who once walked past her without ever seeing her face. At the hearing, Nathan's lawyer spoke with confidence. It is illogical and emotionally suspicious that a man of Mr. Whitmore's stature would leave his entire estate to a maid, especially one with no legal or familial ties. We believe this was manipulation, exploitation. Eliza sat still. No tears, no rebuttal. Then her lawyer stood. We have documentation, letters, private journals, handwritten notes by Mr. Whitmore himself. But more importantly, we have witnesses. Staff members who saw the respect, the quiet bond, the daily acts of care that no one else ever bothered to notice. One by one, they came. The cook, the driver, even the gardener. Each one told the same truth. She was the only one who treated him like a human being. Not for his money, not for his power, just for him. Nathan was silent until Eliza stood up. For the first time, she walked to the front of the room, held out the letter Mr. Whitmore had written, the original copy. He wasn't confused, she said. He was finally clear. And if love, loyalty, and kindness are grounds for theft, then maybe the world has forgotten what wealth really is. She stepped back, and for the first time since the will was read, the room was quiet. The court ruled in her favor. Eliza Harris was declared the rightful heir to the Winterridge estate. The will was upheld, the challenge dismissed. Nathan left the courtroom without a word. No apology, no eye contact. The press wanted statements. The world wanted drama. But Eliza simply walked back into the mansion, the same way she always had, quietly, without celebration. That night she stood alone in the grand dining hall. 12 chairs, one long table, a chandelier that sparkled like it belonged to a different planet. She didn't feel powerful. She didn't feel victorious, just responsible. The next morning, her lawyer asked if she wanted to start selling assets, restructure the board, redecorate the house. She shook her head. I want to open it, she said. Open what? The house. To people who've never had a place that felt safe. Women starting over. Girls who've been through things they couldn't say out loud. This house had rooms no one ever used. I think it's time they were filled. By the end of the month, the papers had a new headline. Former maid turns billionaire mansion into shelter for women. Some called it foolish. Some called it noble. Eliza didn't care, because every night, when she walked past those old marble halls, she saw girls at the piano, women laughing in the garden, new stories growing inside old walls. She still made tea at 4 p.m., still used the same chipped mug Mr. Whitmore once left behind. Not out of nostalgia, but because some rituals don't belong to the rich. They belong to the human heart. Her name was Mira. At least that's what she told them. She arrived one rainy afternoon, carrying nothing but a duffel bag and a folded piece of paper. She didn't look anyone in the eye, didn't smile, didn't cry. Eliza greeted her at the door. "You're safe here," she said. "You don't have to explain anything." But Mira did something unusual. She handed Eliza the folded paper before stepping inside. Then she walked straight to the smallest room on the 3rd floor and closed the door. Eliza waited until the house was quiet before unfolding the paper. It wasn't a letter. It was an old photo, black and white, faded at the corners. A man, young, clean-cut, standing in front of the very same mansion they were in now. On the back, in shaky handwriting, he said he built this house for her, but she never lived to see it. There was no name, no date, no explanation, just that sentence. And Eliza, for the first time since Mr. Whitmore's passing, felt something she hadn't felt in months. A chill. That night, she went up to Mira's room. "Do you know who the man is?" she asked gently. Mira didn't look up. "No," she whispered, "but I think he's my grandfather." "What makes you say that?" Mira held up a necklace, worn, silver, with the initials HW carved into the back. Eliza sat down, stunned. Harold Whitmore had no children. At least, that's what everyone believed. But now, the house was whispering again, not in words, but in loose ends finally making their way home. The next morning, Eliza climbed to the attic. She hadn't been up there in years. Mr. Whitmore never allowed staff to clean it. He said it was just dust and old junk. But Eliza always felt there was more. She opened the creaking door. The air was thick with forgotten time. Old boxes, covered furniture, mice-silent corners. And in the far back corner, beneath a worn canvas sheet, was an old wooden trunk. The kind people used before suitcases had wheels. Inside were papers, letters, journals, dozens of envelopes, some sealed, some opened and folded again and again, and a small velvet pouch. Eliza opened it carefully. Inside was a locket, engraved with the same initials as Mira's necklace, HW plus MS. She turned to the letters. One caught her eye immediately, written in familiar script addressed to, "My daughter, if you ever find this." Her breath caught. "Mr. Whitmore had a child," she read slowly. "She was the only one I ever loved after Margaret died. But her family said I ruined her, that I wasn't fit to raise a child like her. They left, took the baby, told me to stay away, and for years I did. But I kept hoping that one day the girl would come back. If you are her, if you're reading this, you deserve to know. I never stopped waiting." Eliza lowered the letter, and suddenly, Mira wasn't just a girl running from something. She was someone finding her way back to something that had been stolen from her. That evening, Eliza went to her room. Mira was sitting by the window, the light catching the edges of her face, so much like the photo. Eliza placed the locket and the letter on the table. "I think he was your grandfather," she said quietly, "and he wanted you to know. He was sorry." Mira didn't say a word, but her fingers trembled as she picked up the letter. And for the first time since she arrived, she cried. Nathan always had sources. Even after the court ruling, even after the mansion slipped through his fingers, he kept a network of lawyers, journalists, and family friends who whispered things to him before they reached the public. That's how he found out about the girl. "Mira," someone said over the phone. Black hair, young, quiet, supposedly the granddaughter of Harold Whitmore. Nathan didn't say anything for a full 10 seconds. Then, Send me everything. I'll handle the rest. 3 days later, Nathan arrived at the gates of the mansion. Again, this time not with lawyers, but with a single folder in his hand. Eliza was in the front garden when she saw him. "What now?" she asked, voice calm but tired. He didn't smirk, didn't posture. Instead, he handed her the folder. Inside, a copy of this birth certificate. Mira's name, her mother's. And at the bottom, a blank space where the father's name should have been. "Looks like Granduncle Harold had secrets after all," Nathan said. "You can call this closure, or you can call it a loophole. What do you want?" He looked toward the house. "I want a seat at the table, a portion, a name in the foundation papers. Or I go public. You know how the media loves a headline like, 'Heiress maid hides biological heir to secure inheritance.'" That night, Eliza sat with the Mira in the library. She told her everything. Nathan's threat, the document, the leverage. And then she asked her the hardest question. "Do you want any of this?" Mira looked around, at the shelves, the windows, the room her grandfather once lived in. Then she said, "I don't want money. I don't want a title. I just wanted to know I wasn't left behind on purpose." She looked up. "But if you need me to fight, I will." Eliza smiled. "No, you don't have to fight." She stood, walked to the fireplace, opened a drawer, took out a document of her own, a revised will. "I already made you part of this house," she said. "Not because of your blood, but because of your heart." The next day she called Nathan. "There's nothing for you here," she said simply. "And if you try to take this family apart again, you'll learn that not all quiet women are weak." Then she hung up, and for the first time, Nathan had nothing left to say. Months passed. Winter turned to spring. The mansion no longer felt like a fortress. The halls no longer echoed with silence. There was laughter in the kitchen, footsteps running up the stairs, fresh flowers on windowsills Eliza once cleaned in silence. The shelter was growing. More women arrived, some with children, some with stories they still couldn't tell out loud. But they stayed, because here, they weren't just taken in, they were seen. Eliza no longer wore her uniform, but she still woke up early, still made the tea at 4 p.m., still walked the halls with quiet eyes, checking every detail, not to please anyone, but because she loved this place. Mira stayed too. She started taking classes online. Sometimes sat on the front steps with a book in her lap and sunlight on her face, as if reclaiming every day that had been stolen from her before. One morning, she found Eliza in the garden. "You never told me why you stayed all those years," Mira said. "When no one saw you, when they treated you like you didn't matter." Eliza looked up from the soil. "Because even when you're invisible," she said, "you can still choose to do something kind, and kindness has a way of coming back." That evening, Eliza opened Mr. Whitmore's letter again. For the last time, she didn't cry. She didn't reread it. She simply placed it in a frame, set it on the fireplace mantel, and lit a single candle beside it. Then she whispered, soft, steady, "Thank you. I hope I've used it well." And in that quiet moment, the house, once hollow and haunted by its past, felt like it finally had a heartbeat again. Not from money, not from legacy, but from love that asked for nothing and gave everything. Thank you for spending this quiet moment with us. If the story meant something to you, hold on to it. And if you're ready for more, stories that don't shout, but still echo, then subscribe to Rain Inside. Leave a like, share it with someone who needs it, and let your heart speak in the comments. We'll be here, waiting to tell you the next one.